one of the most important misconceptions in software engineering is that we assume that if we receive a requirement specification, we build what it says in the requirement specification, and we test it and then deliver it to customers, that we are delivering value to customers. This may be the case when you are a small team of consultants developing for a single customer that actually knows what he or she wants. But if things start to scale in terms of the number of customers, teams, features, etc., it rapidly becomes much less clear what it is that constitutes value. And our research, as well as research by others, shows that basically somewhere between half and two-thirds of all new features are never used or hardly ever used, and are actually not worth the R&D investment into those features. And the question happened that I've walked around with for a long time is, how can it be that we have such a poor performance record when it comes to building functionality that is actually being used by customers, that we do not just believe is being used, but is really being used? And I, in the research that we've done, I have come to believe that there are three aspects that are at play here. I mean, the first is fuzzy definitions. If you have a very high-level description of what you believe the impact of a certain feature or some new functionality will be, then of course it's very easy to simply claim that afterwards that you have achieved that outcome. So the problem with this is, for instance, in one of the companies that I work with, they refer to increasing customer confidence as the impact of a certain feature. But customer confidence is such a high level and vague and non-quantitative term that it becomes very difficult to trade off customer confidence versus market share or product price or quality aspects or something like that. The second one is the lack of feedback loops. And what I mean here is that even if we go out and we make predictions about the impact of new functionality, and even if we go and quantify it, very seldomly do we actually go back and measure whether the impact of an individual feature was actually accomplished, if we did get the quantitative impact that we were looking for. Because unless there is a feedback loop, there is no learning. And then we keep basically operating in the model that we've always used. The third reason is, and this sounds really bad, but it is politics. I mean, the fact is that companies are made up of humans, and humans operate in a social grid. And what I've noticed is that within product management and R&D, it's not uncommon that certain functionality or ideas or features get prioritized, even if everyone knows that it won't have any impact. It's basically pure waste, but it is simply there to placate certain individuals that have some kind of misconception about what will actually deliver value to customers. As a basis for this, and that's what the focus of this video is, we need to accept that most of the time we have very little, if any, idea about what the impact of a feature or a function will be. We simply don't know. Things are unknowable. And the only way that we get around that is by running experiments. Rather than building a complete feature top to bottom, include a kitchen sink and make it gold-plated and throw on some Swarovski diamonds, the idea basically is we build the thinnest possible slice of functionality that we think will have at least some initial impact on what we're looking to drive progress on. And then we try to get that initial slice out there, and we start to measure if it indeed has any impact on what we're trying to do or not. And by running that experiment and having a kind of iterative way of building new functionality, only building the next slice when you have enough evidence that this experiment is actually delivering what you were expecting, only then can we start to drive the R&D effectiveness. The important thing here is that very often we have to distinguish between something that customers say they want and what customers will actually do in practice. Because what I see is that in many contexts, customers will say one thing, But if you look at what they actually do in practice, it is a very different thing. So we have to, and especially in B2B context, you have to balance where you rely on what customers say they want and where you rely on what customers actually do in practice. And this is where techniques like A/B testing and other approaches come in. So to conclude, my belief is that half of all new features that get built in a typical system or product are basically waste. We have to be much more experiment driven in our development in order to address that. Because in my view, the only way that we can increase the R&D effectiveness, meaning the amount of value we create for every unit of R&D invested, is through experimentation.